I am Dorrine Mendoza. I am the Product and Partnerships Lead at the Product and AI Studio at the American Journalism Project, a venture philanthropy that is rebuilding local news across the country. We have 50 newsrooms across 36 states, and we are working with some of the most innovative local news organizations in the country. Today we're talking about local news publishers who are creating AI-powered products and what they're learning as they build. To say that generative AI is presenting challenges and opportunities for journalism is an understatement. It is reshaping our work and how individuals are finding and consuming news, while also raising critical questions ethically for news organizations. For years, we've seen large news organizations devote resources and significant time to experimenting with machine learning and variations of AI to build custom tools and improve their workflows. But where does that leave smaller newsrooms? And that's what we're going to explore today. How newsrooms of all sizes are making AI work for them and what kind of investment that really takes. We're going to dig into what's working. We have a lot of great examples, what gets in the way of progress, and what leaders need to know as they navigate this space. Like my fellow panelists, I come to this conversation with firsthand experience. In 2023, just 7 months after ChatGPT launched, we launched the American Journalism Project's Product and AI Studio with support from OpenAI and the Patrick McGovern Foundation. This was done to help local news organizations explore and implement AI-driven solutions in a way that serves their missions, and we offer a combination of coaching, support, and investment. Over the past 2 years, we've made relatively moderate grants to nonprofit local news organizations, and we've seen significant results in some of these newsrooms, which I hope we get to talk about today. I'm joined by this great group of panelists who also bring years of experience. Aimee Rinehart, Aimee Rinehart is in the middle, in case you don't know her, Senior Product Manager for AI Strategy at the Associated Press and a journalist who has been working with news organizations to test and implement AI-powered solutions. Nikita Roy is a data scientist, journalist, Knight Fellow at the International Center for Journalists, and founder of Newsroom Robots Lab. She has been deeply engaged in researching and developing AI applications for news around the world. And Christopher Baxter, CEO and president of Spotlight PA, who is also a part of AJP's portfolio and has been leading real-world AI experiments in his newsroom. So this is bound to be a very rich conversation. Thank you for clapping, Jim. Yay. We have lots to cover, and we have a little bit of shortened time to do that. We want to leave time for questions and answers. So let's get started. Chris, I want to talk to you first. When we were first talking about this conversation, you mentioned that some of the things that weren't accessible just maybe even a year ago are accessible now to you. So can you tell us a little bit about the experiments you told us about?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking about, in my prior role, I led the data and investigations team at the Star Ledger in New Jersey. And when I took that team over, I combined some of our investigative folks with some of our data journalists and newsroom developers. And as part of that, I took it upon myself to take some classes and learn the basics of coding, not because I was going to do it, but because I wanted to appropriately understand the potential of the people I had on my team, the realm of possibility. And when I think about that, and now with AI, I think it's very much the same, but AI has accelerated that. And so my experience, and I think this is a big thing for small newsrooms, is interacting with AI helps you understand the possible, right? So maybe, like, for a long time, we've dreamed of this automated process with our Facebook lead gen ads, right? Where, like, as soon as a story publishes, it gets ingested, it gets prepared, it gets queued. There's parameters in terms of performance to up a budget, drop a budget. This is something like we've dreamed about on staff because we do it all manually. But I spent just a few minutes with Claude, right, posing this question of, like, is this possible? What would it look like? How would it work? And I got to a point where I was like, oh, I think this is entirely possible, right? And in that case, I handed it off to someone on staff. But on another case, where I wanted to make it real easy for our reporters and editors to surface headline suggestions, description suggestions, keyword strings, et cetera, right in the Google Docs where we do our stories and before they get ingested into the CMS, I just went down a rabbit hole for a day or two and figured out the entire process to not only create that, but integrate it as an extension into our Google Docs, deploy it to the whole team. And I was able to just do that on my own. And I have very basic understanding, but I think that is for small newsrooms, right? For small teams, that is the power. And it doesn't have to be something as big as like a Google extension, but in big and small ways, things either that we put off, right, that we don't like to do, that it can save us time, or things that we've dreamed about, right, and it can help us realize those dreams are possible. It's thinking about that it's not about getting us all the way there. It's about getting us a head start and saving us time that we need to spend otherwise, like on the important journalism.
Yeah, great, thank you. So Aimee, we're going to toss it over to you. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been talking to a lot of newsrooms, and you shared some of these things that you find are approachable, applicable to newsrooms everywhere.
Yeah. So I came to AP in 2021, which is so long ago, right? But we came in on a Knight Foundation grant. I say we, Ernest Kung and myself. And it allowed the AP to be an ambidextrous organization. That is, we were able to keep the plane in flight while also experimenting. And that grant funding really made a huge difference. And our mandate wasn't really to understand AP, it was to understand local newsrooms and their interest and adoption and maybe even resistance to AI and filling in those knowledge deficits. So I think, AP has been experimenting, of course, with AI, but I really see enormous potential every day and a lot of inspiration, which we'll go over, from local and community newsrooms. And a big reason why is because AI right now is very accessible. It's low cost, it's often on sale, sometimes it's free. It's also no code. So really the code is whatever you prompt, whatever you use using your natural language and conversation to prompt to get results out of basically a chatbot, or in this case, a chatbot.
So how many people out there feel like you're behind? Like you are way behind, okay. All right, so not too many of you, that's great.
Wow, I'm always behind.
I've heard Aimee say this over and over again, like you're not behind. You should be starting, you should be experimenting, but you're not necessarily behind. So we're gonna look at some of the news organizations that are very tiny but are having some success.
Yeah, sometimes the inspiration I take away most often is from the small newsrooms, and in this case, Paris Brown, who runs the Baltimore Times, she is experimenting for front publishing content, but also back office things. And so in this case, the Martin Luther King Jr. estate is very protective of his likeness, and they often don't license his image. But she wanted to, commemorate the anniversary of his death, his birth. Anyway, wanted to commemorate him. She wanted to do 3 covers, and she turned this over to ChatGPT and DALL-E to prompt this cover, and she presented this for her community. And she's also doing it for back office organizing. She's using ChatGPT. I was at a conference with the local media association where she thanked God from stage for her new partner who shows up to work on time and doesn't cost very much. This is another great example. This is one of the first people who really inspired me. His name is Hank Sims. And Hank, this is his baby. He runs this website called Lost Coast Outpost. And he was the first person who confessed to using images and also said that he was using generative AI to do these public hearing announcements. And at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, you can read it just from left to right as a regular meeting announcement, but you could also view it as a conversation between Beavis and Butthead. There's 50 other personalities to it. I think that what's fun with that is it adds a little bit of joy or whimsy to it. It doesn't always have to be so serious. And it's Hank's website. He can do whatever he wants.
Things newsrooms are known for, whimsy and joy.
Right?
So I love this example because one of AJP's newsrooms, Open Campus, the editor was trying to show reporters the benefits of AI, and one reporter came up to him and was like, look, you say AI, I feel dirty. Please don't say that. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to learn how to use it. A resistance we see very often. And so he took her investigative story, turned it into a movie script. Then he turned it into a poem. Then he turned it into a white paper. And for some reason that, and I'm saying her, but actually I think it was a he, got their mind kind of running about, oh, all these things are possible. All of these things kind of inspired creativity. 2 weeks later, this same reporter created their own GPT to help them with their reporting. So it's these examples of people using it for things not necessarily in journalism, but to open people's minds as to what's possible. I think we have another example here. Yeah.
Yeah, Vanya Andre at the Haitian Times, she's created, so if you have an enterprise license to ChatGPT, and that's about $20 a month, they have a function called GPTs, and it's kind of fine-tuning your own large language model with up to 20 documents. And what she has done is created a style book based on, I think, AP style, but also the Haitian Times specific style, and she runs every article through that so that it kind of pre-scans it for editors. And I think that that's a super interesting use case. She's got a dozen of these that she uses to power her newsroom, and she said it's been enormously helpful. And a lot of these use cases are not for reporting. It is for moving information, it's for assembling information and distributing that to their readers.
Yeah, have you guys created GPTs for your newsroom, or do you have them in your newsrooms? No, all right. A ton of opportunity then. Lots of things to do. And I believe that that's a plus account, not an
not just enterprise
account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, over to you, Nikita.
Yeah. So just a bit of background. Newsroom Robots Lab, we train. Oh, my mic's not on. Oops. Thank you. So Newsroom Robots Lab, we train all the way from local national publishers all the way to over 6 continents, and trying to find somebody in Antarctica, any news publisher over there. I also host a podcast called Newsroom Robots, and this is an example of a tool that we've built I'm calling it a journalist AI clone. It's my AI clone. It's trained on all of the podcast episodes we have done, but also all of the trainings that we've done, all of the talks, and it serves in 2 purposes. One, we're launching it so that our subscribers are able to go and have questions and ask questions about what local newsrooms are doing, which episode can we get insights from. It functions as a normal chatbot, but this one over here I'm showing an example of is going to show you how you can interact with it through voice. And so this is an example, really, just of what can be possible. Instead of me talking about what's happening with AI and local news, here's an example of my AI clone telling you from our podcast episodes.
Hi, I'm Nikita Roy. How can I help you?
And that's
with
not,
AI in your newsroom?
the audio is not working.
How can AI help me in my local newsroom?
AI can really transform a local newsroom by handling repetitive tasks like summarizing city council meetings or generating SEO-friendly headlines, freeing up journalists to focus on deeper reporting. Tools like Satchel AI, for instance, can automatically turn transcripts from public meetings into draft stories that you can refine and publish, which is a game changer for covering local governance efficiently. Plus, AI can help analyze large data sets like municipal budgets or public records to uncover stories that might otherwise go unnoticed.
So that it's going to continue, and it's actually leading into my next example of a Toronto bot that was created to help analyze municipal budgets. But again, this is just an example of a new way of interaction through conversation, through voice, where you can talk to all of the information across all of our podcasts and trainings, all of that entire content archive that we already have. But not just that, my team and I, we've been using 2 different versions of this internally. One version is on all of the content, all of the archives of information within just our company, clients we've worked with, what the impact has been, being able to pull information across our business processes. That has been extremely helpful. But at the same time, for me, I have been using it as a way to talk to my reporter's notebook. All of these insights that I gather from conversations, from conferences that I'm at, being able to pull together insights across different types of ways and patterns, that's an ability for me now to expand my notebook from something I can have a conversation with and be able to drive knowledge and push forward the conversations that I'm even having. So this is just an example of a bot that we've been able to create and are currently having it available for our subscribers and newsrooms that we're working with. So as I was saying over there was an example of a municipal budget bot that was created in Toronto. This was actually what I was talking about. This was a podcast episode we had done with Kristen from Toronto Worse. This was a newsroom that unfortunately was affected by all of the issues that happened in Canada with Facebook not having news anymore and couldn't continue. But this was a very innovative project that they had at that time called the Municipal Budget Analyst. They had a Discord bot where you could go and interact with it, ask questions such as over here about how do the cops compare to the TDC, the transportation on expenses, and audiences, as well as just their journalists, could interact with all of these municipal budget documents and be able to gather insights and data that would have taken them really long time to do. A similar thing is being done in Brazil, where they are monitoring and interpreting government documents. So this is an example of Legislatech. It's a tool that is monitoring all of court proceedings, judicial documents. Just imagine the number of documents that are out there in the local, at a local level that we are not able to cover as much, that data that is just sitting out there. And that is really the potential for AI that you're seeing that local newsrooms have already been experimenting with, from Toronto to Brazil. And so this is really, I think, the power for generative AI. Another example, so this is all in the research phase. Another example is repurposing news for different platforms. So this is one example I've seen a lot of newsrooms use. A tool called Nota has been used by a lot of local newsrooms to convert their articles into Instagram Reels, also to help write newsletters. You can take podcast videos, convert them into short reels. So different ways in which, again, you can repurpose your articles, your podcasts for a different platform across social media. So you have it on the research side as well as for the distribution side that AI is currently helping a lot of local newsrooms.
So one of the newsrooms that we've been working with, CPI out of Puerto Rico, they received their grant, didn't do anything with it for a little while because they just didn't have the capacity to devote energy and effort to doing translation. They knew what they wanted to do, but they didn't have the people, the time to get it done. So they hire Noel, who's their English language editor, and he comes at it full force. He's excited. He really wants to get this done. In a matter of months, he had started to document all the different experiments that he tried. They wanted to take their full Spanish language content, translate it into English, but keep all the cultural nuance that was so important to their diaspora. Everything they tried was almost there, not quite. Almost there, not good enough. And they started to get frustrated, but he documented everything. He created this sort of playbook with all of his different prompts. They finally started using the OpenAI API to adjust the temperature and do all these different things with it, and it started working. They turned their translator into an editor who is now reviewing the content, making small adjustments. We published their playbook, we published their story. They are now doing 100 times better than they were before. They're able to translate all their stories. But the best part about this was they did this all in a matter of months. And when the fires broke out in LA, we have a small English newsroom there, but they have a very large Spanish-speaking audience, and they had kind of had to stop doing Spanish language translation because of resources. So we took a prompt from the playbook that CPI published, gave it to that newsroom during the fires, and they were able to start publishing their stories in Spanish about school closures, power problems, road closures, emergency shelters right away, because this has been tested, we knew what it could do, and that was a huge success for us. And Noel was so excited that his work led to something good for another small newsroom. He said something like, "This is a seed that has floated through the air and landed and created a new tree." And I was like, okay. I love that you're excited about this. But the newsrooms are able to help each other, and I think they really love that. They love being able to do things for each other. It's not just for them. Okay, back to you.
So the next few examples I'm going to have are from the Nordic newsrooms. And I mean, Aimee says we're not behind, but I would say we are behind in the US. We are behind in the US in terms of AI literacy. We are behind in the US with AI experimentation. We are behind with the infrastructure to be able to power all of the AI applications that are coming ahead. We are behind. The US is behind. This is an example that I'm showing from Norway. It's a 25% small newsroom serving just the Tromsø region and a northern part of Norway. And this is an example of a tool that they built to help monitor all of the municipal documents that come out. This is a beat-specific AI assistant to help their urban development reporters. They only have about 2 of them, extremely seasoned, but when they're away, there is no coverage about any of this. On average, these reporters used to take, their job was mainly about 400 municipal filings would get posted every single day, and they would be scouring through all of these PDF documents to find if there was any newsworthy information. It takes them about 2 hours every day. Their product team, AI team, worked with their editorial, really understood what their pain points were, and were then able to create this tool that automatically pulls in all of these 400 documents that get posted every day, gives them, as you can see, a summary, then gives them an estimate of what the news value is. And this was all trained by the journalist, looking at all of these documents, giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And as a result, the AI model was able to basically have that gut instinct of a journalist. And now, within minutes, it's able to surface documents that are newsworthy for them so that they are able to go and follow up on those. And instead of spending 2 hours sitting behind a computer, they just spend 5 minutes and instead are outside talking to sources. That is the value that it's bringing them. It's bringing them, instead of sitting behind a computer, to actually be out there doing that work of talking to other people, talking to sources, and they've been breaking stories. One of the extremely insightful impact about this was that within the first week of this tool being launched, it was able to have 2 of their interns who were there fresh out of journalism school produce 5 cover page stories. This is a beat that takes years to develop, and this was helping them be able to understand which were those newsworthy documents that they should be following up and going. So this is an example of how they have really created. There's a lot of things that they have done, very, very innovative stuff, just a 25% local newsroom in Norway. Taking it into a bigger newsroom in the Nordic region, Aftenbladet, they are one of the top newsrooms, but I wanted to talk about this because of the culture that they have built in that organization. After ChatGPT back in 2023, they put together a task force, so an AI innovation hub. They pulled their best top sports reporter. They had folks, a couple of designers and developers, but a bunch of journalists, about 7 of them. For a year, the AI Innovation Hub's job was to just speak to editorial and experiment with building a lot of AI tools. And they built out this AI buffet, so a suite of custom AI tools. A lot of them were GPTs that have been built at Haitian Times. So like a 5-point generator, take an article, convert it into a TikTok script, a buddy reader, so a journalist could help proofread and talk about their article to a GPT before it even goes to an editor. Stuff like that, that they were able to quickly experiment, see what was working, what was not working. It's all about experimentation at this stage. And then just another two examples that they have actually had right now is they do short audio summaries of all the top stories, completely AI generated. It's published 3 times a day, and it's very popular with the younger audience. Again, helping with that distribution of the information that you're already producing. And then third, another very interesting example, and one of the most successful chatbots that I've actually heard about was this election chatbot that they created for the EU elections. One of the striking features of this is it really helped increase the login rate for going in. It's a free news platform, so all of this is the first-party data that they're trying to collect. On average, it exceeded the number of times people would tend to log into these platforms. So again, very, very useful way of interacting with your audience. A lot of newsrooms are having this, like the Washington Post for climate coverage, UOL for, Spotlight PA, as we just saw, tax information, Olympics. So I've been seeing around a lot of event-specific or maybe beat-specific chatbots that have been created so far. But you also have a lot of experience with the Nordics and are a huge fan of them, Aimee.
Well, they're leading the way. Do you know why they're smiling? Because they're routing U.S. newsrooms. They are far and ahead of us. I think they have a sharing culture, which I think is critical right now. We cannot keep secrets. We cannot keep things to ourselves. We have to share, which is why I've been a little vocal about this topic. What they've done too is the Nordic region has agreed to a set of principles, and every newsroom in Sweden around AI, and every newsroom in Sweden has signed on to those principles. Where are we ever going to see that kind of agreement here in the U.S.? I mean, I would love to see that, but they're far and ahead. They're investing, they're experimenting, and they're sharing. That's the most important part of this.
So we at Spotlight PA last year, with the help of the American Journalism Project, undertook our first major AI project. And we started from a point of trying to solve a problem, which I think is a really helpful place to start, and helpful framing for our reporters and staff as well. And that problem was that during major election cycles, we saw this also during COVID, we just get inundated with questions. And we can't answer all of those questions, but we also know that when we do answer people's questions directly, it generates a higher level of value and loyalty than other interactions. So we wanted to be able to create something that was really trained and focused on our content and trusted content that could help us answer questions about the election. And so what we created, working with a company called Dewey, was a backend, really. The front-facing system that you're seeing here displayed was great, and I'll talk about that success in a minute, but I actually think the real learnings were on the back end. So the system, every time we published a new election story, our Dewey chatbot would ingest that story automatically. It would generate a whole series of questions that could be asked or answered by that story, and then our staff was able to go in and review those questions and review the suggested AI answers. And either approve them outright, or we could edit them and then approve them to send them out into the flow. The tool then was able to distinguish its answers, well, first of all, interpret the question, and then distinguish answers by a few different categories. So it could be an exact match, meaning we had an exact answer to an exact question, or very close. We then had near matches, which is there were 3 sources within our database that suggested an answer to that question, and then there were sort of the last, riskier pool. And what we were able to do on the back end is, and a big part of this, right, was control. Obviously, this is a very sensitive topic. We don't want to put out any wrong information, but the back end system with Dewey gave us tons of control. So we could throttle how often or how much it would give certain types of answers, how far we would let it stray from the source material, and we could monitor that on the back end. We could also see when it did not answer something because there wasn't a close enough match, and then we could go in and answer that question, put it live into the stream, and then next time that was asked, it would be there. We ended up doing a beta test in the spring where we invited our members actually to participate in a beta test, which they loved, and I thought was a great way to sort of involve them in the process and introduce them to what we're doing and why we're doing it. We were actually quite surprised by our reader reaction. We had no idea what people would think, but we were really pleasantly surprised because the responses were, wow, thank you for showing me a useful application, a responsible application. You got me thinking about good things that this can do. I think that the general populace has a very basic and often fearful understanding of AI, and understandably so. So we ended up doing that beta test. We also partnered with Pitt Cyber, so we had an outside check and balance and sort of tester that was just constantly testing our system, testing the beta test, trying to break it, trying to get it to say crazy things. We wanted an extra independent layer working with us. And then when we launched full public before the election, we set an error thresholds as we went. So if we did start seeing errors that exceeded our thresholds, we had standards by which we would either immediately intervene or we would shut it down. We didn't have to shut it down. We also had to control for potential error and to prevent it from being replicated multiple times. We hired someone who would read over every answer from the prior day and review anything that might have been incorrect. The other great thing on the back end of the system that we developed along the way was we worked with Dewey to assign risk ratings behind the scenes on answers. So it would tell us if it stretched too far for an answer, or if it was too far from the source material, it would automatically get flagged as risky. And that flagged risky answer would automatically pop into Slack, and we could go right in the back end and either tell it don't answer that, or answer the question, approve it, and send it out into the flow. So we ended up answering more than 3,000 questions from readers ahead of the election, which is way more than we could have done otherwise. I do want to share, though, like the realities of the project, right? And that is, this took an immense amount of human capital and time. We picked a very difficult topic because election news changes constantly, and so it was very hard to stay on top of. And it was really difficult for the staff and a challenge to come up with a checks and balances framework that we felt comfortable with. That being said, a lot of the functionalities on the back end, I think, are useful and applicable in what I sort of say safer content areas, maybe content areas that are not changing as rapidly, which are you know, a lot of what we cover does not evolve as rapidly as this did, and other applications like over top our archives, or other ways that, you know, people can interact. But I think, again, the big takeaway was the framework we were able to create on the back end to really assist us in keeping the reins on the thing. It was nowhere close to being able to just be like a full generative responder. Like, if we just, like, because we tested it at every kind of threshold level and looked at what it would do, and at the wide open level, like, it was nowhere close to being able to operate that way. But even the simple function of like reading a story and saying, these are the questions this story can answer, or you could flip it around, like, right, we just did a big investigation, we want to do like a 5 takeaways post after, like, keep it alive. I ran one of our recent investigations through, and I was like, what are the 5 questions people are most likely to have about this? And we'll take those 5 and make that the Q&A. Yeah. So, yeah.
And the other great thing I think about that was the people who found this useful mostly came from the article. They weren't necessarily going to the landing page, or they weren't looking for this chat assistant to help them answer questions. They would read a story, see that there was an opportunity to ask more questions, and then do that.
Yeah, one of the whole things like we're focused on across the board right now is how we better meet people in the moment they need a piece of information. Mm-hmm. And like, even in elections in a state of Pennsylvania, in the stakes of the election we just had, right? The reality is, like, people tune in very late and they spend a very short amount of time on what the heck is going on. Yeah. And so we wanted to develop the tool and put it right in the article because we want to have a resource in the 10 seconds that they're thinking about elections and in that split second that they have a question, and we want to have a resource right there to answer that question. And we've been doing that in other ways too, just trying to close the gap between information and when people need it.
And it didn't take $1 million and like 13 developers to do this, right?
Yeah, no, we had a $25,000 grant. We did not even spend all of it on this particular, but obviously we did have additional costs. Like we brought on a freelancer to do our fact checks and things like that. But no, and I think that's kind of a great part of the AI lab is I think targeted project-specific approaches are great because, and also like AI doesn't have to be the whole project, right?
Yep.
These could be, I mean, we have tons of ideas always that we want to accelerate and move to action, but it sometimes just takes a little accelerant, like a little extra funding to push that forward. And it might be a bigger, news app or something, and AI can be a component piece. It can help do this piece and that piece and get it out. And so, yeah, I think, from a funder perspective, this is something where actually a small amount of money can have really great results. If it's a focused project-based thing and there's a clear kind of need being met or problem being solved, the return on that kind of investment for a real end result and potential real good public good, I think is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, low amount, high return.
Great, thank you. We only have 3 minutes left. We're supposed to go on to some other slides, but if you have questions, you can come up here to the mic and ask any of us questions. And I also want to leave 1 minute for Jeff, who's going to talk about how you can get some money from the next challenge that is opening up. Does anybody have questions? Sunny. I love it. Come on up.
Sunny Messiah Giles. I don't know if to start, talk loud enough. Sunny Messiah Giles, Houston Defender, Houston's leading black information source. Okay, so I've been experimenting with AI mostly on audience engagement, content generation. Have you seen any way that AI has been used? Have you seen any way in which AI has been used to generate revenue or engage with customer service, particularly revenue?
So the question is whether we've been using AI or anyone has been using AI to generate revenue.
Or to assist in generating revenue.
Or assisting in revenue. Yeah.
I know that there's a lot around propensity model, like propensity for subscriptions and to lock people in that way, and then personalization gets to an aspect of that as well. So yes, I think there's an opportunity there. Mark Hansen and his group at the Brown Institute have piloted a few of those propensity models for about 4 newsrooms.
There's a lot of newsrooms that are using AI to help them with grant writing, to help them find grants, research, prepare for those grants. So that's another really great way as well. Don't just ask ChatGPT to write your grant, but it requires a lot of ways in which it's something that would take you days and hours is really, really much more shortened. And I know a lot of newsrooms that have been doing that very successfully.
And we're working with a couple of newsrooms right now. One of them is trying to automate a sales deck for their sales team so that when they go out and do pitches, they don't have to spend hours creating the sales deck. They can ask it for specific information. It populates the deck, and off they go. And then there's another organization that is doing sort of a cold email funder GPT so that you can say, you have the same history all the time. This is what we do. We don't know you. We'd like an introduction. Here's what you need to know. And then here's a little bit of information about the funder. Send this email and see how it goes. I don't think that's been deployed yet, but.
Yeah, and another one that I know of is like when you're sending your emails to your readers as well, being able to version them differently instead of sending just a mass appeal email to donate to your newsroom. You can do different versions of them, and that sort of like versioning and personalizing in a way is also one way I've seen it.
And we're also working with Blue Lena and News Revenue Hub on some membership campaign tests using generative AI, and we'll be monitoring those, see how those go, and publishing those results once we have them. But Blue Lena has some interesting results so far that I'm hoping they will write about very soon. Okay, Jeff, where are you? Let me pull up the slide here.
All right, now getting to the money. My name is Jeff Freeland Nelson. I lead Glenn Nelson Center, which is part of American Public Media Group. And this is the pool we swim in. Our primary tool is we invest in early stage media startups that are enabling high quality journalism across the country. And one of the things we do is the Next Challenge for Media and Journalism, which kicks off today. And what we're doing is we are going to make $200,000 in grants to very early stage, little baby startups that are in this space, that are helping transform local news. So digital news startups that you know, who are building technology that's enabling local news, and also for open source intelligence, looking for companies that are using AI and other tools to bring all this data into the fore and make it available to journalists to use to create the journalism that we're all going to count on. We're not doing this alone. We're aligning this work with Press Forward. I'm the co-chair of the infrastructure working group for Press Forward, and we're trying to make sure that all of this is connecting with Press Forward's goals. And where does the money come from? It's from our friends at Knight and MacArthur and McKnight and others who are helping us pool these dollars to make sure that there are startups across the country that can get the support and this exposure, and more importantly, get out there to the newsrooms and the journalists that can use the technology. So my ask of you is to point your phone at this and take a picture of this link. This is going to skip all the fluff, take you directly to the application. You can send it to anyone you know out there in a startup, and truly these can be startups that were started last week that have a great idea and are deploying technology that's going to transform media and journalism. So please take a picture, send it to your friends. And a month from now, we'll have 400 or 500 startups. And come June, for those of you that are at the Media Impact Forum, that's where we'll have the awards ceremony and make those $200,000 in grants. If you have any questions, I'll be down here and happy to answer. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you guys very much.